Hi everybody. This week we're going to begin a new series on the life of Joseph out of the book of Genesis. Joseph's story takes up 13 chapters in the book of Genesis, and that just kind of gives you an idea of just how important the life of Joseph is in the story of God's people, in the story of the Israelites, and to us as we dive into what the Bible has to say about our lives today. So we want to begin his story in Genesis chapter 37. A little background on who Joseph is. He is the great-grandson of Abraham, who is the patriarch or the father of the Jewish people. His grandfather is Isaac, and his father is Jacob, who God changed Jacob's name to Israel. And so Joseph's brothers and himself are actually literally the sons of Israel. Joseph is the favorite of his father, and we're going to find out that gets him into some serious trouble here in the next few verses. So Genesis chapter 37, we begin in verse 1. It says, "So Jacob settled again in the land of Canaan, where his father had lived as a foreigner." This is the account of Jacob and his family. When Joseph was 17 years old, he often tended his father's flocks. He worked for his half-brothers, the sons of his father's wives, Bilhah and Zilpah. Great names, by the way. But Joseph reported to his father some of the bad things his brothers were doing. Jacob loved Joseph more than any of his other children because Joseph had been born to him in his old age. So one day, Jacob had a special gift made for Joseph, a beautiful robe. But his brothers hated Joseph because their father loved him more than the rest of them. They couldn't say a kind word to him. One night, Joseph had a dream, and when he had told his brothers about it, they hated him more than ever. "Listen to this dream," he said. "We were out in the field tying bundles of grain. Suddenly my bundle stood up, and your bundles all gathered around and bowed low before mine." His brothers responded, "So you think you will be our king, do you? Do you actually think you will reign over us?" And they hated him all the more because of his dreams and the way he had talked about them. Soon Joseph had another dream, and again he told his brothers about it. "Listen, I have had another dream," he said. "The sun, moon, and 11 stars bowed down before me." This time he told the dream to his father as well as to his brothers, but his father scolded him. "What kind of dream is that?" he asked. "Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow to the ground before you?" But while his brothers were jealous of Joseph, his father wondered what the dreams meant. Soon after this, Joseph's brothers went to pasture their father's flocks at Shechem. When they had been gone for some time, Jacob said to Joseph, "Your brothers are pasturing the sheep at Shechem. Get ready and I will send you." "I'm ready to go," Joseph replied. "Go and see your brothers and the flocks are getting along. Then come back and bring me a report." So Jacob sent him on his way, and Joseph traveled to Shechem from their home in the valley of Hebron. And check this out. When he arrived there, a man from the area noticed him wandering the countryside. "What are you looking for?" "I'm looking for my brothers," Joseph replied. "Do you know where they're pasturing their sheep?" "Yes," the man told him. "They have moved from here, but I heard them say, 'Let's go on to Dothan.'" So Joseph followed his brothers to Dothan and found them there. Okay, so Joseph has these crazy dreams where everything is bowing down to him. When you're a young kid and you're the favorite, and then you start talking about how you're having these dreams that everyone is bowing down to worship you, it's a little offensive. So that's the setup for this. Then he goes out and he finds his brothers pasturing the flocks of their father Jacob. And it says this in verse 18, "When Joseph's brothers saw him coming, they recognized him in the distance. As he approached, they made plans to kill him. 'Here comes the dreamer,' they said. 'Come on, let's kill him and throw him into one of the cisterns. We can tell our father a wild animal has eaten him. Then we'll see what becomes of his dreams.' But when Reuben heard of their scheme, he came to Joseph's rescue." Reuben is one of the brothers. "Let's not kill him," he said. "Why should we shed any blood? Let's throw him into an empty cistern here in the wilderness. Then he'll die without our laying a hand on him." Reuben was secretly planning to rescue Joseph and return him to his father. So Reuben's kind of the good guy, kind of the mole in the group of the brothers. So when Joseph arrived, his brothers ripped off the beautiful robe he was wearing, and they grabbed him and threw him into the cistern. Now the cistern was empty, there was no water. Then just as they were sitting down to eat, they looked up and saw a caravan of camels in the distance coming towards them. It was a group of Ishmaelite traders taking a load of gum, balm, and aromatic resin from Gilead down to Egypt. Judah said to his brothers, "What will we gain by killing our brother? We'd have to cover up the crime. Instead of hurting him, let's sell him to those Ishmaelite traders. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh and blood." And his brothers agreed. So when the Ishmaelites, who were Midianite traders, came by, Joseph's brothers pulled him out of the cistern, sold him for 20 pieces of silver, and the traders took him to Egypt. And sometime later, Reuben returned to get Joseph out of the cistern. When he discovered that Joseph was missing, he He tore his clothes in grief. Then he went back to his brothers and lamented, "The boy is gone. What will I do now?" Then the brothers killed a young goat, dipped Joseph's robe in its blood. They sent the beautiful robe to their father with the message, "Look at what we found. Doesn't this robe belong to your son?" Their father recognized it immediately. "Yes," he said, "it is my son's robe. A wild animal must have eaten him. Joseph has clearly been torn to pieces." Quite a story. Joseph's brothers hate him so much that they try to kill him. When they're convinced by Reuben not to kill him, they end up selling him as a slave to these merchants on their way down to Egypt, and they take Joseph to Egypt. I want to talk to you today, just a few minutes here, about the nature of dreams in our life. Do you have dreams for your future? Do you have dreams about the kind of person that you eventually want to marry? Do you have dreams about where you want to go to college or a career, where you want to live, the kind of lifestyle you want to have, travel plans? All these things are dreams in our lives. And sometimes the dreams that we have, when we share them with others, it doesn't go well, right? I think sometimes people feel bad about their own lives, and when we come and talk about all the great things that we have in store and are planning on and dreaming about, sometimes the natural reaction, and I do this too, is we want to cut people's dreams down to size. We want to tell people what the realistic, more acceptable life path might be. Well, that dream is cool, but it's shooting a little high. Don't you think you should have more realistic plans? And we tear people down because we don't want to have a less cool life or a less fulfilling experience in our lives than the next person. So we tear other people down. The thing is, if you are a dreamer, if you're someone who has great plans, it can be very frustrating because you feel like you can't tell anybody about all the things that are in your heart to do because people don't understand or they want to tear you down. But here's the thing. Sometimes God puts a seed of a dream in your heart, in your life. Something maybe when you're real young. I remember even in middle school, feeling like God was calling me, and I had a dream of someday being in ministry full-time as my job, that I could, pastor students just like my youth pastors were pastoring me. And, at the time, sometimes you don't know how to process those dreams. It doesn't mean the dream isn't real. It doesn't mean that the dreams God gives you aren't meant to be. It just means that sometimes we're too young or maybe a little immature to be able to handle the dreams that we have. Do you notice that? As we'll learn in the story, these dreams that Joseph has actually come true. But the way that Joseph handled them, by running to his brothers and being like, "Hey guys, someday you're going to bow to me," it wasn't real wise. And so I think this is true, that when we have dreams in our lives, good things that God wants to do, we have to pray for wisdom and maturity, knowing how to handle the dreams that God gives us. What wisdom says about the steps we take to achieve our dreams has everything to do with whether or not we'll reach them. And I want to discuss this in your group tonight. What are the dreams in your life? What do you want to be? And what are the steps you'll take to accomplish those things? And have you experienced those moments when other people around you have put down your dreams or discouraged you from something you want to achieve? Maybe because it's unrealistic or way too big of a dream, but people have come against you. And the last thing I want to discuss is this. In your family, do you have situations where you have a dysfunctional family, siblings, parents that are a discouragement to you? Let's discuss this. And how can we encourage each other and exist in those families that sometimes aren't always encouraging to the dreams we have in our lives? How can we exist in a way that honors God? We'll come back next week and discuss what happens when Joseph ends up a slave in Egypt and what God does through his life. We'll talk to you then. Bye-bye.